We're close right now, but we're still friends. And when we met, I remember she took me for my first pedicure. She took me to buy clothes. We were going clothes shopping, and I was putting on shirts that were 2 times bigger than what I needed. And she was like, that is way too big for you. I'm like, no, it's not. It fits perfect. And she's like, no, Shanann, it doesn't. And she helped me regain confidence that I didn't know I even had. She helped me find me. And, you know, through that, I've met so many people in my life that have helped me through all of that, helped me build my confidence, helped me. You just have to surround yourself with people that want better for you, just like they do for themselves. And if you do that, like, you're on top. Like, you're on top of the world when you have people that you surround yourself with that make you better.
Shanann Watts was a very beautiful woman. I love these pictures of her. These are my favorite. But what was Shanann hiding? We know from her tapes, from her family, that they claim that what they saw from Chris Watts was nothing short of the best guy that could ever possibly be. He was the perfect guy, quote unquote. So what was she not telling her family? Question mark. Many of us have a friend or loved one who has suffered domestic violence at the hands of a spouse or partner. In many cases, loved ones and family members did not know about the domestic violence until prosecutors charged the abuser. Many women hide domestic violence so well for so long that people almost do not believe them when the domestic violence charges come out. Domestic violence is often called private violence because so many victims hide the violence for years or even decades. In many cases, women do not divorce their violent husbands until their husbands are charged with domestic violence. Many times, nobody even knows that a woman has suffered physical domestic violence until the police arrest and charge the abusive spouse. Domestic violence is much more common than most people think. It is impossible to find reliable data on the prevalence of domestic violence because so much domestic violence is not reported and remains hidden for decades. Many cases will often go unrecognized by the public. Statistics show that 1 out of every 3 women has experienced an abusive relationship. Additionally, 1 out of every 5 women has faced severe physical domestic violence. Every year, domestic violence hotlines receive over 200,000 phone calls. Why didn't you just leave him? Is a common and often hurtful question that well-meaning friends and family ask. People who have not experienced DV firsthand probably do not understand the shame involved in being a victim.
And then I met Chris. My health challenges happened. I was diagnosed with some health challenges, and then I met Chris.
Psychological abuse, like physical abuse, is used to gain power and control over an intimate partner and can be a precursor to physical violence. Unlike physical abuse, psychological abuse is hard to see because it happens with words and demeanor without physical contact, yet it's undeniable to the psychological harm it causes. Psychological abuse is made up of coercive tactics embedded in an intimate partner's behavior that contain hidden injuries to the targeted person. The tactics are intended to gain the upper hand and keep the other off balance and controlled. These behaviors, also recognized as emotional abuse, can include gaslighting.
Then I met Chris.
Bullying, intimidating, verbal threats, ignoring, criticizing, demeaning, humiliating, intentionally including fear with angry outbursts and gestures, discounting and actively undermining the intentions and strengths of the other.
I met Chris because of those health challenges.
These coercive behaviors are extremely injurious to the targeted person. Psychological abuse targets thoughts, feelings, and perceptions and is known to impact a person's psyche and sense of well-being to the same extent as physical abuse.
my friend sent me a friend suggestion for him. It was actually his cousin's wife, and I deleted it. I was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to meet a guy. Bye-bye. So I deleted her friend suggestion for him. I was diagnosed 2 months later, and I went through one of the, I would say, darkest times of my life because things just got scarier, worse. I thought my life was crumbling underneath me, and I didn't know which way to turn.
One research study showed two important results: that physical health problems resemble those who have experienced physical violence, and those facing psychological abuse are twice as likely to identify physical health issues as those who are not abused.
I didn't have a lot of friends at the time because a lot of my friends, the friends I did have, I lost because they didn't understand that I looked perfectly fine, and I felt horribly inside, horribly. I felt a lot of discomforts, a lot of aches, a lot of bad moods. I met a lot of friends online, and in the part where I gave up on everything, I quit my job. It was kind of temporarily, but kind of quit my job of 9 years. I just said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. You don't understand me. You don't understand what's going on in my life. And I quit. And I got a friend request from Chris.
An even bigger consequence is the traumatic impact psychological abuse has on mental health.
I was in a really, really, really bad place. And I got a friend request from Chris on Facebook. And I was like, oh, what the heck? I'm never going to meet him. Except, one thing led to another. And 8 years later, we have 2 kids. We live in Colorado. And he's the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Even subtle psychological abuse, undermining, discounting, without overt psychological abuse, dominating, demeaning, or violence can be traumatizing. In fact, subtle psychological abuse correlates more with women's emotional states than acts of sexual and physical violence.
And because of my health challenges, because I got so sick, I let him in. And he only knew me at that time.
These findings make a strong case that when you live with someone who is psychologically abusive, it's just not possible to feel well or be your best because you're at a very high risk for a multitude of health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder.
He only knew me at that time. He knew me at my worst, and he accepted me. And, through your vows, like through sickness and everything, he's been there. He was the one that let me lay on him and fall asleep for 3.5 hours on his lap while he had to pee.
I just want to say that I've noted that Shanann had multiple health problems, and she also had a previous marriage prior to Chris Watts that ended in him cheating on her. She basically put him through school, and he used her, basically. Not too different than Chris Watts. Is it a far jump to say that all of the injuries and illnesses that Shanann and the girls had were a result of her going from one bad toxic relationship to another? The statistics agree that usually women that are in domestic violence relationships that are hiding it are prone, if they do get out of the first one, they are prone to go into a very similar, or if not worse, relationship the next time. And what's more sinister than Chris Watts handling Shanann's medications and drugging her? He admitted it a couple times already, so who's not to say he wasn't doing that this whole time? And just hiding it in plain sight, hiding it from her family, hiding it from her friends, and even manipulating Shanann so much that it was hidden right in front of her face. Let's not forget neighbor Nate, who has the only surveillance that the cops have as evidence, retracted his statement about yelling and screaming and carrying on at the Watts residence. Was that NK and Chris Watts fighting? Or was that Chris Watts and Shanann's lengthy domestic violence history? Leave your thoughts below.
He is the best thing that has ever happened to me.